Hello, everybody. Welcome back to some more Overwatch League Pick'ems. Right now, I'm here alone. I was just about to head to bed and realized that I needed to have this done. So, I'm back. I know I also probably sound awful because I feel pretty awful. Uh, so, this past week kind of guaranteed a lot of teams to make it into the Summer Showdown. So quickly, seeing that the Hunters kind of continue their pretty decent streak here. They beat out the Spark in pretty convincing fashion. I mean, Seal clearly swept the Dynasty. They also swept the Charge. Valiant didn't put up as good of a fight as we expected from Spark. And another thing that I want to bring up is I didn't realize it until now that the Valiant have been running Dia on Junker Queen, which has just been really kind of weird. Just kind of seems like it's coming out of nowhere. So Philly was able to put up a better fight against Shanghai than I would have expected, especially since they got swept by Hunters the last time and almost lost to the Valiant as well. And speaking of Fusion, they went map 5 against the Charge in a losing effort. And lastly, Chengdu and Shanghai went uh, not the way that I had expected. Personally, I expected this to be a very close game. But clearly it wasn't. Chengdu lost 3-0. This was still a decent match. I saw a little bit of it, and I think that it was just kind of a very. It seems weird to say that it was a very close game, even though that Shanghai won 3-0. I feel like Hunters put up a really good fight, and any map could have went in the Hunters' favor. And week 3 for the West region, the Houston. Houston was a big surprise. Not Houston, Atlanta. Atlanta was a massive surprise. Coming out and beating the Spitfire was something that I don't think anyone was expecting. They using Vigilante, they've started picking up victories, although it doesn't seem likely that they're gonna make it to the Summer Showdown. So clearly, Shock beat Nixel. And surprisingly, Vancouver picks up the victory against Justice. Incredibly close game, super fun to watch. I think it just kind of showcases just how strong both of these teams are right now. Even if, Justice aren't, at their best spot, Vancouver's in an absolutely phenomenal place right now. They are clinched in, basically, for this tournament. There's definitely ways that they could not make it. I'm trying to find. I guess while I continue talking about this, I mean, Titans. They did also go. They did also lose to the Outlaws, which is a bit unfortunate. But and that just kind of shows the power of Houston. I think Houston is a really dominant team. Even if you aren't a massive fan of Houston, you do have to admit that they're tank, Dante, one of the best players on tank right now. Even though he isn't the most consistent, he's definitely been the most impressive as being one of the lower kind of middle of the pack tank players. He's been a huge instrumental part of the Outlaws' success. So, Spitfire continued to disappoint as they lost in a map 5 match to the Justice, which clinched Justice into the tournament. They are going to be going in there. So, you do have that. Houston had a really close game against the Reign. Definitely could have went either way. But I think that Houston winning kind of proves that Houston really is just a really decent team. And lastly, Florida and Dallas pulling out probably one of the most interesting matches this tournament. Florida pulled out Farah Mercy. Dallas brought out Echo. It was just so many things coming out of nowhere for both of these teams. But Florida was unable to pick up the victory. And I forgot exactly who said it. I think it was actually McGravy. Would go on to say on Twitter that, they decided they would have a bit of fun since they knew they weren't going to beat the Dallas Fuel in the mirror. They just decided to go and do as they pleased and just had a little bit of fun with the game. Just to kind of experiment and see what worked. But this is the final week of the East region. Sorry, I need a drink of water. East region seems to be a bit all over the place still. Anyone can still beat anyone. So quickly going into it, we have the Chengdu Hunters taking on the Guangzhou Charge in the first round. Chengdu, they do have a little bit of momentum. Sure, they lost to the Dragons 3-0. And Charge are also having this big momentum with beating the Fusion. But Charge also got swept last week. So, both of these teams have a lot to fight for. And I am going to give it to the Hunters in a map 5 finish. I think that both of these teams have a lot of potential and a lot of strengths. And it just is going to come down to who can outmaneuver the other. I think this could go either way. And it's definitely going to be an exciting game. Next up is the Dragons and the Valiant. I want to give Valiant the benefit of the doubt. Last week, they were able to take a map against the Spark, which isn't saying much. But we look at the previous weeks. They went map 5 against the Fusion and the Charge, which is absolutely astounding for them. They got swept by Dynasty, which really isn't saying much. And they were able to take a map against the Spark. So, Shanghai beat them 3-0. But, again, I want to give Valiant the benefit of the doubt. I think that with Dia on the Junker Queen, they're looking a little bit better. And I'm looking forward to see the Valiant kind of give a better performance than they have been in recent times. Next up is the Charge and the Spark. I'm actually going to give this to the Guangzhou Charge. I think that Spark is just in a really downward spiral here because they just can't catch a break with this Junker Queen. They've really struggled to figure it out, which is kind of surprising. Because I feel like Bernard kind of really fits the playstyle of Junker Queen. And the fact that Bernard really hasn't been able to perform very well on the character is a bit disappointing and a bit surprising. I think that given the next meta after we get out of the Summer Showdown, we could possibly see Spark kind of rise back up because Junker Queen is getting nerfed. Hopefully we can see a bit of a change in how Spark performs, but I think that Charge really is just kind of clicking with this meta a lot better than they have been in recent tournaments, and especially with getting Xerneas and Jimmy and Farway. I think this team really has a lot more of a powerhouse behind them, and that's going to give them the edge against the Hangzhou Spark. Next up, we have the LA Valiant and the Chengdu Hunters. This is a difficult one to go with. So Valiant have been doing fairly okay. Again, looking back at their previous games this tournament, they went map 5 against Fusion and Charge. They went 4 maps with the Spark, and they got 3-0 by the Dynasty. Hunters, they also got 3-0 by the Dynasty. However, they were also 3-0 the Fusion. They got 3-0 by Shanghai, and they won 3-1 against the Spark. Both teams are doing really good, but I do got to give it to the Hunters, but I do think Valiant do have potential to bring out a pretty decent fight here. The Valiant is definitely one of my favorite teams right now, mainly because they're such an underdog, and it's just kind of like a waiting for the perfect time to strike. The perfect time to strike was a long time ago, because they are guaranteed to not be making it in the Summer Showdown. So, It's mostly just Chengdu at this point, trying to bolster their numbers. Next up, we have Seoul versus Philly. I'm giving this a 3-0 to the Dynasty. I think that Fusion don't stand a chance. They've been running Carpe a little bit on the Fusion, which has been a bit surprising. It's been working somewhat decently. Especially since MN3 on the Sojourn in this meta is just not been the strongest. So being able to switch out for Carpe has really kind of improved this team's composition and this team's ability to take maps. But Seoul is just way too dominant right now. I don't even think they've lost a map yet this tournament. Yeah, they 3-0'd Valiant, 3-0'd Dynasty, 3-0'd Hunters, and 3-0'd Spark. They're yet to lose a map this tournament, and I think that this is going to continue into the final week. Next up, we have the Hangzhou Spark versus the Philadelphia Fusion. I gotta give this to the Fusion. Spark not looking the best right now, as I mentioned before. Bernard really can't click with Junker Queen, and that's really what's kind of deteriorating this team's strong suit. The hope is that going into the next tournament, they're able to kind of adjust and adapt and come back even stronger. That is the hope. That is what all of us Spark fans are hoping for. But going into this tournament, they really just aren't doing all that well. And when it comes to the Fusion, they're looking a lot stronger from last week. And this week, hopefully they can keep that momentum going. You know, they didn't have the best performances. They took a map off the Dragons, and you know, they had a very close game against the Charge, who have been looking somewhat decent lately. I think that with Carpe coming in on the hit scan on the Sojourn has really been helping them. They haven't been able to do that well, but Spark just really hasn't been doing all that great either. This could go map 5, but I think regardless, Fusion are winning this. So, lastly, to end out the East region, we have the Shanghai Dragons and the Seoul Dynasty. This is probably the best game to end out the tournament for East region, because you have the two dominant powerhouse teams going at it. Both Shanghai and Seoul are going undefeated in this tournament, and this will likely determine who gets first seed. If Shanghai wins, that will, or I think regardless, Seoul has first seed, since they have not lost a map. And Shanghai has. Shanghai lost a map against Philly. They lost a map against, they only lost a map against Philly, which is one less map than Seoul has dropped. So, if Shanghai beats Seoul here, they would have to do it 3-0, and Seoul would have to lose a map against the Fusion, or at least one map. They would have to go map 5 against the Fusion in order to lose that second seed to the Shanghai Dragons. And I don't really see that happening. I think that this could be a really close game, but I do got to give it to the Seoul Dynasty. Seoul has been absolutely insane. Seeing Creative, Stalker, or not Creative, but Stalker, Fitz, Prophet, Smurf, all of them just kind of pulling their own weight and doing absolutely phenomenal. All throughout this entire tournament, I think that that's what's going to give Seoul the upper hand against the Shanghai Dragons. Last up, we have the West region. This is where a lot of references to previous weeks is going to come in. First up, we have the LA Gladiators in the Atlanta Reign. So this is a map that is having a lot of effect on the chance that Vancouver has going into the final, into this tournament. And I'm quickly trying to find it while I'm explaining it, but personally myself, I see Atlanta winning this. I think that Oh no, I actually see the Gladiators winning this because if we look at what happened last week, uh, the Gladiators brought space in on Junker Queen. And this is what I've been saying to Rudd and what Rudd has also been saying. They needed to get Reiner off of the Junker Queen. They just needed to just try Space in this role. And Space performed really well. Even though it was against the Paris Eternal. So, if they're now running Space on the Junker Queen and they're not going to be running Reiner in this match, I think that Gladiators are going to win this. And genuinely, this could be a big thing for both of these players. Or for both of these teams, I should say. But on what I was saying about Vancouver, because this match does have a lot of implications for that. There are 5 ways that Vancouver can make it to this tournament. Vancouver has to go 3-1 at best, or at worst, against the Uprising. If they lost to the Uprising, if they at least take a map, they clinch. If Florida doesn't 3-0 both Paris and Nixel, if they lose a map to either Paris or Nixel, they will make it. If Toronto beats London, Vancouver makes it. And if the LA Gladiators beat the Atlanta Reign, Vancouver makes it. If any of these happen, Vancouver makes it. If Florida doesn't lose a map, they will make it in. Or I don't really know the exact implications of which ones will have an effect on the team. But Vancouver is looking to be either 8th or 7th in seeding, which is a huge improvement on how they've been performing lately, because they've pretty much always been the 12th, 11th seed, just behind the Paris Eternal. So Vancouver definitely looking like they could go to this tournament. Maybe not go extremely far, but they definitely could make it. Nixel and Paris, I gotta give Nixel the win here. I do think that Paris could take him out. Paris, they got this new roster. Doesn't look great, but they're also against the New York Excelsior, who just are not looking very strong. So, to close out Friday, though, we have the absolute biggest match. Similar to the Shanghai Seoul, is the Dallas Fuel and the San Francisco Shock. This is going to be probably the best game of the entire weekend. Except for maybe Vancouver Boston. Because the second that they win a map, they're in. And it's one of those things that I wish there was, fans to see it, because, man, that is just something that I want to see. The reaction to Vancouver picking up the victory is just something that, a lot of people don't expect. And it's similar to how, when Shanghai got their first win, and even when Vancouver got their first win this year, and when Paris got their first win this year, and when the Valiant got their first win this year, a lot of these teams, the reaction for it has been so big, regardless of what team, who you're supporting. And while it's not as monumental as, say, Shanghai's losing streak coming to an end, it's definitely been big, because Vancouver was so bad last year. They were so bad the year before that coming this year, another brand new team, they just didn't look good. They weren't good. And then in came King, and in came the victories. Now they are going to their home country to represent alongside Toronto to make it into the Summer Showdown. But, that being said, Dallas and Shock. Two of the scariest teams this year in this tournament. The Dallas Fuel look amazing. Hanbin has... Hanbin was made for... Junker Queen was made for Hanbin. On top of that, they have Edison, who's been doing really great on Sojourn. Then you also have, Sparkle on Genji. Like, this team has just been insane. Shock as well. They currently hold the longest winning streak in the regular season over multiple seasons. Over an individual season, they still have 4 to go. 3 to go. So, but with that being said, this is going to be map 5. But I'm giving this to the Dallas Fuel. I think that this meta plays incredibly strongly to the playstyle of the Dallas Fuel. Just a little bit more than it does to the Shock. I think Shock is definitely going to look great in this game. I think that it's going to be an incredibly close game. But when it comes down to it, I feel like Dallas has just a slight better clicking to this meta than the Shock do. Next up will also be a little bit of news here. I think it was actually technically today, August 31st. Florida got rid of Kariv. It's a bit of a surprise, but it also is not because they really haven't been playing Kariv. They've been playing Surmajed instead. So, it's a bit of a surprise, especially since like the trade cutoffs are done. So Kariv is just kind of forced to sit at the sidelines. So, but regardless, Florida's beating Paris. However, I mean, I want to quickly look at Paris, at Florida's recent performances. Like, going into this tournament, Florida, they started really strong. They beat the London Spitfire. Then they got swept by the Shock. And then after that, it just went downhill. They got 3-0'd by the Justice. And this was the beaten down Justice that, just lost their entire roster, basically. Then, week 3, they lose to the Dallas Fuel again. This time they actually took a map against the Fuel. So it wasn't all bad. But, their performances have been really bad. And I want to actually say that, Paris has a decent shot at coming close to this. Again, Paris, not good at all. They're yet to win a map this tournament. Like, they got 3-0 against the Gladiators, they got 3-0 against the Rain, they got 3-0 against the Titans, and the Justice. So, both of these teams, not looking great. Florida clearly gonna win this, but just like I did last week, I do want to give Paris a map. And just like the Nixel match, I want to give them a map. And actually, I'm gonna give Paris 2 maps against the Excelsior. Nixel, again, not looking the best, especially after week 1. Week 1, they looked pretty good, and then after that, they just kind of quit trying. So, next up, though, we have the Justice and the Outlaws. I was talking about this with Rod last week with the Honor Picking video. A lot of the, I wanted to kind of wage how this match would go based off of their matches against Vancouver. And Rud also mentioned London because both teams also faced the Spitfire. So when it comes to Justice, they lost map 5 to the Titans. Houston 3-0'd the Titans. And when it came to London, Justice won map 5 against London, and Houston got 3-0'd by London. So, this match really does not those 2 matches didn't really have much of an effect on how this went. Yeah. I mean, really, this one's a hard one to kind of predict for me, I feel. Houston and Justice both look really good. Uh, Kalios really kind of showing that he was slept on. And Decay and Assassin just absolutely went off as well. Just this team itself has just been so great. Even after losing the majority of their roster. And Houston looks really good. They got rid of Piggy, which was unfortunate, but they also picked up Lep and Doge off contenders. Lep has been a fairly decent Lucio. Not great, but and then you also Doge really just wasn't that great on Junker Queen, which is why Dante stepped up, took over the as Junker Queen, has been doing really good ever since. And I mean, really, I feel like my performance, my choice has to kind of go more so off of this Vancouver match. I mean, this is such a big gap in the skill of these teams. I mean, Houston lost 3-1 to the Spitfire. It was a very close game throughout. Spitfire loses map 5 against the Justice. That's a bit close. Although it does go into the favor of the Justice. I mean, these Titans matches looked night and day for both of these teams. For both Justice and Outlaws, but also the Titans. The Justice and the Outlaws. I mean, I gotta give this honestly a map 5. I'm actually I'm gonna take that map away from Paris. In fact, I'll take both of them, or all of them away from them. And I'll take one away from Atlanta. That's my I think that's pretty intelligent to do, right? Next up, what we all want to see, the Vancouver Titans pick up another victory, this time in a 3-0 against the Boston Uprising. Boston looks really poor because they figure that every time they're given the opportunity, they're going to try to bench Punk. It hasn't worked yet. Mag, as amazing of a Junker Queen as he is, just does not perform well with the Boston Uprising players, coaching, who really knows what the issue is with them. But Mag just doesn't seem to click with the team. And I think that if they were to bring Punk back for this match, I think Boston could very easily win this. Even with as good as Vancouver is, Punk is surprisingly one of the best Junker Queens. I think that him and the Boston Uprising could take a very close game against the Fuel. And even the Shock, I think that if they played Punk in that Shock match, that it definitely would have been a 3-0 on Balls' part. I think that they would have at least taken a map against the Shock. But, again, Boston just sleeps on Punk. So that's kind of unfortunate, but in turn, I think it's going to cause a 3-0 for the Boston Uprising. For the Vancouver Titans, I should say. Next up is Toronto and London. London looks to possibly clinch a spot here. I believe all they have to do is beat the Defiant, and they make it. But I think that Toronto is playing really strong right now. And while London is going to be able to take a pretty decent fight, Michelle is just, again, one of the stronger Junker Queen players, especially compared to Hottie. And you also have Hisu, who's an absolute insane Sojourn. Like, this team just is pretty decent in this meta. I mean, Toronto's had good performances across the board. Even if they've lost, they've always looked strong, even in defeat. And London has either been really good or really bad. So, I mean, right now, I think that this is London's time to really prove themselves. But I don't think they're going to be capable of doing that. And lastly, to close out the weekend, probably the match that has the least amount of implications, especially since both of these teams are not even in the tournament. That is the New York Excelsior versus the Florida Mayhem. Florida, Nixel both look really, really weak. But I do want to give Florida the victory here. I think it's going to be close. I think that Nixel has the potential to take on the Mayhem and possibly even come on with a victory. It just depends on what kind of Nixel we see this week. And, I mean, Florida, again, not looking all that great. But Nixel at least has a win under their belt. They picked up the victory against the Outlaws in week 1. And then they just kind of let that momentum go. And hopefully they can pick it back up and look strong as the weekend ends. I mean, 3-0 in Paris would be really impressive, I feel, for them. So, hopefully that 3-0 against the Eternal gives Nixel what they need to pick up this victory against the Mayhem. Even though I'm predicting that Florida is going to win, just because that seems more likely. Personally, myself, I want to see Nixel succeed. I want to see them thrive. I want to see them finally pull something together and look strong, leaving a meta. But with that being said, that is the final week of the Summer Showdown before we get in the actual tournament. Toronto's going to be in for quite the tournament. Just so many teams that are coming in here looking for blood. Vancouver finally coming back to the top. Houston and Justice both coming in for redemption. The Gladiators also looking for redemption to prove themselves that they're still a top threat even after their stumble early in the tournament. There's so much at stake for this tournament for so many of these teams. Toronto looking to finally turn up for their home crowd. There's just so much on the line for these teams that I'm really excited to see how this week goes. Because I would love to see this tournament be as exciting as the rest of them. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I will be looking forward to seeing you guys next week for the Summer Showdown brackets. That's right, brackets, plural, because this is a regional tournament. The East region will be playing in China or in South Korea, I don't remember. And the West region will be playing in Toronto. So, look forward to that. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a wonderful day.